Good morning, everyone. So I'd like to bring out my panel, Sophie Beckham, Manager of Natural Capital Stewardship at International Paper, and Townsend Bailey, Director of Supply Chain Sustainability at McDonald's. Have a seat. Nice to see you. So we're going to kick off with a little video and then start off our conversation.
There is the tree, the forest where the tree grows, and the woman who cares for her land. There is the man who listens to the birds to make sure the forest is healthy. There's the scientist who tests the water, the crew who cuts the tree, and the man who makes it lumber the way his father taught him how. There are the carpenters, the designers, the companies they work for, responsibly choosing their materials. And then there are the people, like you. They play a part to keep this cycle going, to keep the forest healthy. And there is a tree that tells this story.
One simple action can have a profound impact. Look for products with the FSC logo and help protect the health of our forests for all, forever.
All right, so wonderful video, beautiful. But there's one thing I saw there, and there was a really big one out there, is the bane of almost every sustainability director's existence, at least at some point in their career, the coffee cup. See, I get a lot of laughs for that one. So Townsend, you at McDonald's have had a lot of reaction in the past year, coffee cup. And so what happened? How did this change? How did this move come about to change the cup?
Yeah, great question, John. So there's really two reasons, two things that led up to the change. It starts with, as with everything, it starts with our product. We spent a lot of time on our coffee sourcing to make sure we're sourcing high quality beans, and we got a great tasting product that our customers love. But as we try to tell that story to our customers, if we serve it in a foam cup, they don't believe it. So we can have Rainforest Alliance certified espresso. We can have great sustainability programs in our supply chain. We can have great tasting, high quality coffee. But if we try to tell them it's high quality and put it in a foam cup, they didn't believe it. So that was one aspect, was creating the packaging and the medium that tells the story of the high quality coffee we're serving as well. And then at the same time, in 2014, we published our packaging sustainability framework and policy and set a target to have 100% of our fiber-based packaging sourced from certified or recycled sources by 2020. And so that also laid the groundwork to move towards a fiber cup and to make sure that that fiber came from either certified or recycled sources. And in our policy, we have a preference for FSC certified fiber as well. And so that also set the challenge for International Paper in terms of helping us figure out how we're going to make sure that we have enough FSC certified fiber to supply all 14,000 of our restaurants in the US.
So I think that's a good point. So let's talk about scale just for a second before I ask Sophie how they actually achieved it. Give some examples of scale at McDonald's, whether it's cuties or whether it's toys or books. Just where does McDonald's fit when it comes to changing something in your supply chain?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, when we purchased cuties, well, I'll give an example from a few years ago. When we purchased Mighty Wings and we launched our Mighty Wings, we had to build up the supply for about 10 months to be able to supply during the NFL season our Mighty Wings as well. So it's not something that you just flip a switch and all 14,000 restaurants are readily available. It takes a lot of planning. It's going to impact whatever industry we're working on, whether it's blueberries for our smoothies when we roll out smoothies. And so it requires a lot of collaboration with our full value chain. So it's not just we're flipping the switch, it's working with our long-term suppliers and strategic suppliers to make sure that they know what's coming and that we can work together to figure out what's the best way to get it to our restaurants.
I remember, I can't remember the numbers, but that when you do your Happy Meals with books, you become the largest publisher in the world.
Yeah.
So Sophie, how do you deal with that scale of demand? I mean, when McDonald's says, oh, we want to go all FSC certified in a new cup, how does International Paper actually achieve reaching that scale?
Sure. So I think, McDonald's, our customer, came to us and said, we want to transition to this fiber-based cup. We'd like it to be FSC certified. And, we're a company who transforms renewable resources into products that people depend on every day. And sustainable forestry is really the foundation of our business. So that's the place with that kind of request that we said, hey, we can really leverage our expertise here. So we went to the mill and the area from which we knew we would be getting that fiber to make the cup stock for McDonald's. And we reached out to the landowners in that area. And those are supplier relationships that are really important to us. And I think we've heard this a bit at this conference, but that's really where the business to human component is. So we reached out to those landowners and we said, okay, we'd like to buy as much FSC certified fiber as we can to produce these cups. What we found is that there was very little FSC certified forest land there. And so I think that put us in a position of sort of saying, okay, what can we do? How can we be engaged with our landowners and with our supply base to actually meet our customers' need and also to continue to work to advance responsible forestry practices on the ground.
On Tuesday, I had a woman from Asia Pulp and Paper talking about their supply chain, and it's government-owned land, and it's huge tracts of land. But you're in a very different business here in the United States. So can you talk a little bit about the small landowners and how that collaborates with International Paper?
Sure. So that's exactly right. In the U.S., the forest space is really fragmented. We know that about 60% of U.S. forest land is privately owned. For us, 90% of our fiber comes from small private forest land owners. That means that when we want to get some forest land certified, we're not just going out to talk to one or two people. We're really reaching out to hundreds of forest land owners through various supply chains. And I think that's a place that we have good knowledge, and we feel very comfortable reaching out to those landowners. But we also know that McDonald's is pretty far from the forest. And so the first step in that journey was actually saying, well, hey, do you want to kind of come out? It'll be about 1,000 degrees in East Texas, and there'll be mosquitoes and snakes. Would you like to come out to the forest, have a tour, get your feet on the ground, meet some of the landowners that we're working with, and start to help us talk about why this is a value proposition for them, what certification might offer them in their current forest management operation, and how that translates out to the McDonald's customer. And I think that's really critical on both ends of the value chain. Townsend spoke about the McDonald's hot cup, and that represents something to the consumer. It says something about the coffee that's being served in it. Likewise, I think we want the forest landowner to understand that they're part of that delivering that kind of value to a McDonald's customer, and they're also part of the beginning of the journey of that fiber coming from their forest through our manufacturing, through a cup converter, and to McDonald's in the end. So.
Well, this is not supposed to be a buyer-seller conversation. There's a lot more that goes into it. Townsend, what were some of the challenges? I mean, were there barriers that you had to overcome to make this relationship work and to get to this scale?
We've had International Paper is a long-term supplier for us, and one of the McDonald's strengths is our supply chain model. Like, we think about the McDonald's system as, we talk about it often as our three-legged stool of franchisees, company, and our supply chain, and that's a competitive advantage. So many of our suppliers have been with McDonald's since Ray Kroc opened the first franchise restaurant in 1955, and and we value that strategic supply chain. So we already had a lot of collaboration with International Paper and with our, we work with a group called Javi Global Solutions as well to work with to help manage our packaging. And there was already a good foundation for collaboration set up there because it's part of how we operate.
Great, so I'm going to go a little bit off, and I just wanted to ask you a question. Your title, Natural Capital Stewardship, does that communicate to your customers? Do they know what that means? We partner with TrueCost, and a lot of our metrics in our State of Green Business Report are around natural capital. Is this getting uptake? Does that communicate to your customers?
Well, it gives me an opportunity to talk about what that actually is. So I think in that sense, it's the right kind of title to start a conversation. So we think of, strictly speaking, natural capital being the stock of renewable, non-renewable resources that yield the flow of goods to people. But what that means for me in practice is that I get to work with a fantastic team to improve our environmental footprint and to ensure the long-term sustainability of things like healthy forests and clean water and clean air. And that's a conversation that everybody can get their heads around because those are things that people tend to feel pretty highly emotional about. And whether that's because you've had a personal experience that sticks in your mind or because you're part of the conservation community or you're one of the people sitting in this room, there's an emotional connection to those elements. And so it gives me an opportunity to kind of open the door for conversations about what that looks like in terms of our value chain.
Communication is a really key factor here. You're talking about, Townsend, do consumers recognize the FSC label? Are you working to communicate what that means, or you're just hoping that they're not bashing you for the cups you used to have?
It's a great question. So, I mean, and sustainability awareness is always a challenge with consumers. Like, what does the general consumer understand? And that part of the reason of partnering with FSC and partnering with the Global Forestry and Trade Network and with our suppliers is to help increase that awareness. And so you saw the video at the beginning of the discussion to help increase that awareness and help understand, what does that seal mean in terms of actual sustainable forestry and the importance of positive demand for forest products as well. It also, for those that do understand it, it's a really important proof point that, McDonald's, we're out there, we are taking concrete steps. I always think about sustainability as McDonald's best kept secret. Every time I talk to somebody or I ask them, it's always fun to ask them, well, where do you think our beef comes from? Or what do you think about our coffee? Or they're always taken aback by how much we're doing. So it's great to have a proof point to say, well, let's take this cup right here that you're using and point to it and tell that story.
Sophie, is there a role for NGOs in how you put together these partnerships? Are they also brought into this process at times?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to build on what Townsend said, thinking about the structure of the kind of collaboration around the hot cup, our customer brought us a business strategy. I recently read Culture Defeats Strategy. So although we had a business strategy in place that we felt we could really, that was actionable for us, we also know that we have to be able to speak the same language and we've got to be able to motivate the people who are involved in that. And I think, talking about certification being kind of a proof point for responsible forestry, that's a message that we could bring to our forest landowners together with other partners. And Townsend, you mentioned the WWF, Global Forest and Trade Network, and that's an initiative within the World Wildlife Fund that is all about kind of eliminating illegal logging and advancing responsible forest management. So we had a lot of partners in those early discussions when we went to the forest landowner and we talked to them about certification. Just like you can't flip a switch and pump out 15 million Happy Meals, you also can't flip a switch and magically get everyone certified. And so that was a process of outreach and education and of International Paper providing a tremendous amount of technical assistance to actually form a forest management group, which means we have a lot of small landowners, some of them between 100 and 500 acres, who are part of that group. And the initial kind of steps in reaching out to them did involve an NGO presence, and we think that's really important because that also gives us an opportunity to bring our NGO partners into the forest, show them the kind of forest management that's already happening, and then talk about what certification might add to that picture.
Great. Let's see if we have any questions from our virtual audience. Elaine?
Yes, we are getting some pretty good questions here. One of them is actually more systemic related to your infrastructure, McDonald's, especially addressing recycling infrastructure. And one really hot topic is really about the 500 million straws that you produce daily. And so while it's not necessarily just a forestry conversation, it's about all the other kinds of things that you're producing from a supply chain standpoint. So what are you doing? So in addition to fiber sourcing, how's McDonald's addressing recycling infrastructure and also plans on tackling straws?
So recycling in our restaurants, it's important, and it's an important part of our priorities and our strategies. It's a very much more complicated question. In sourcing, we work specifically with our suppliers, and there's a lot of, we have more control there. Our 14,000 restaurants across the country, each are in different municipalities, and each different municipality has its own different infrastructure. And so a lot of that requires a lot of local engagement and figuring out, as we design our packaging, how do we also, how do we design it with the maximum recoverability as well?
But I think you have done things with coffee grounds and you know,
yeah.
what you can control in the back of the house. I think you've done quite a lot of efforts there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have different initiatives around, like, coffee grounds, making our coffee grounds available to customers. That's been tremendously popular, especially here in the Arizona market. We have a real leading franchisee here who has engaged schools and school gardens and to make the coffee grounds available and turn it into an educational tool as well.
Great. So we're nearing the end of our little discussion here. So I think, you know, we talk about cross-industry collaboration, how to partner. For everyone out in this audience and the virtual audience, Sophie, I'll start with you. What are a couple of tips to establishing these partnerships, both with your grower, you know, the forestry, as well as with your customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. A couple of things come to mind that I think were critical to the success of this partnership. First of all, the culture piece, and I think being able to kind of speak the same language. The other piece of it really was getting McDonald's, and we've done this with other customers because we think it's really important, getting our customers out to the forest and actually helping them understand the context in which we're operating. At the same time, that makes the landowner feel that the work they're doing to keep their forest as forest, not only does it provide them an economic incentive when we buy that fiber, but it actually, those forest landowners might be managing their forest land for a lot of different reasons. It gives them a sense of pride in the way that they're doing that when they see a huge brand like McDonald's kind of coming to the ground there. So I think that's kind of critical, is let's connect the ends of the value chain so that everybody kind of shares the same vision for moving forward. And again, I think just the culture piece is really important, and having kind of everybody on the same page when it comes to what our objectives are and where we want to go with this. And just as one you know, kind of note on the success of this, we have more than 500,000 acres that are now in our FSC certified forest management group. That's hundreds of landowners, and that's a big bump in the last few years. So.
I think that almost needs an applause right there, Sophie, for that. I would say three quick things. Knowing where you want to go, like having our fiber policy and publishing it gave us a real clear kind of North Star in terms of what we wanted to do and how we wanted to work. And that gave us able to have clear communications with our suppliers. The reverse version of that is listening to the suppliers. Throughout the development of that policy and as we develop the strategy, listening to our suppliers who are on the ground, who are working with the landowners and who understand the value chain, and making sure that as we set policy and as we set direction, that it's as informed as possible, because our suppliers are listening to everything that we do as retailers, and there's a real tremendous responsibility as a retailer to make sure that as we make requests of our supply chain, that it's going to have the right impact that we want it to have, because the potential for ripples is tremendous. And so having that feedback ahead of time from our suppliers is a really, really important part of the process too.
That's great. Well, Sophie Townsend, thank you very much. We've run out of time, but let's have a big hand of applause.
Great.